Coming up, a side of Jalen Hurts Alabama fans would probably rather not see, and some good news maybe for a Tennessee star that Vols fans would love to hear a lot more of. It is all on the way next, right here on SEC Country Live. Hello everyone, welcome to SEC Country Live. My name is Brandon Adams and this is the former Alabama All-American Mike Johnson. We are so glad you're with us. We got an hour's worth of SEC talk coming your way and some fun stuff to kind of get into today.
Yeah, a tough pill to swallow for Alabama fans, seeing Jalen Hurts with the enemy a little bit.
I want to dive into this and find out from you. In fact, let's go ahead and get right into it. Item number one here on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. So a photo has emerged, and you say tough pill to swallow from the Alabama side. I'm guessing maybe tough pill to swallow from the Auburn side as well. And as we say this, I think Mike and I both are going to sound about 150 years old, and you're about a decade younger than me, so you're in rough company if this is the case. Let me show you the photo in question here. Cam Martin tweeting this out. Cam Martin, obviously an Auburn running back. And he says, good field work today. Working on my craft. Getting better with @Jalen Hurts, #family. So here we have, you know, the Iron Bowl, a rivalry that has divided real families.
Right. Yeah.
And you got real families who don't speak to each other because of this deal. But two guys who are not really familiar with each other. They're just, you know, good friends from the same state, Jalen Hurts and Cam Martin, calling each other family and training together.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I know I sound old school here. I'm going to sound like, you know, 80s NBA is better than modern day NBA because, you know, hard fouls and blah, blah, blah. I don't like seeing these guys, you know, cheesing together and posing the same photo.
Yeah, I understand. And listen, I'm not shocked at all that you feel that way. I'm really not. And there's a little part of me, too, that says, you know, I'd rather you think that, boy, you know, I'm going to tear this guy's head off when I get on the field. You know, I hope all our guys kill Cam Martin, this and that. But I'd be kind of a hypocrite because I'll tell you this much. After I graduated Alabama, I went to the Senior Bowl with a few Auburn players, and I really liked playing with some of them and hanging out with some of them. Yeah. And that was after my career, so it's a little bit different. But I got to tell you, a guy like Ben Tate, I absolutely enjoyed blocking for a guy like Ben Tate. I enjoyed hanging out with some of those Auburn guys. I don't necessarily want to see it during the career, but I'm not going to sit here and fault Jalen Hurts for it. It is what it is. And I'm just glad the guy's working. I'm glad both of them are working. I'm glad. Listen, we're talking about 3 weeks off between, you know, the end of the year and summer school. You go back, a lot of people just sit there. A lot of people don't do a lot. See Jalen Hurts on a football field, I think it's a good thing for a lot of Bama.
Yeah, but wouldn't you rather see him working with a personal quarterback coach than an Auburn running back?
I'd rather see him take like Calvin Ridley down there. You know?
I don't know what field work is, but I feel like that's probably something that Jalen Hurts is already pretty good at.
Yeah. Open field work, things like that. Listen, maybe he's teaching Cam Martin how to run.
Now, there are a lot of people already weighing in the comment section, at least on Facebook. I'll check YouTube in a moment because they'll yell at me if I don't. But on Facebook, people are already kind of weighing in on the opposite of me on this, and really even you too. David Sullivan says both guys from Texas. That's the reason. Y'all act like Texas is as big as my, you know, next door neighbor's yard. This is Texas. This is like, you know, the biggest state in the continental United States. That's not quite as tight a bond as you might think. There's, you know, 100 million people from Texas.
Yeah, I mean,
or not quite 100, but you know what I mean.
It is. I mean, I'm half joking when I say this, but there is the kind of thing. Listen, I mean, we had this going on last year. Was it Damian Harris and Jared Stidham that played Little League together? You know, they kind of had this love affair on Twitter.
I semi-remember that.
And you know, I'm okay with that.
I do remember that because they grew up together.
Yeah, like somewhere in Kentucky, I think they played a Little League together. Something along those lines.
James Perkins says maybe it was part of the Charles Barkley bet. If you don't remember what James is talking about. Jalen had to wear an Auburn jersey because of the bet he made with Barkley going towards the Iron Bowl.
Now that I'm not okay with.
Yeah, right. And Jalen actually handled that pretty well. At least made it kind of a funny deal with the national championship trophy in the video that he shot for it. But you're right. This sort of strike two in this Iron Bowl rivalry for Hurts. He's wearing an Auburn jersey. He's working out with Cam Martin. I mean, look. I'm an old school guy. I'll take the old school L for this one for all the young folks who are arguing the opposite here. But I don't like seeing what I think. I don't need you to really hate each other, but I need you to view the other guy as your adversary and your own teammates as your allies. That's just kind of the way I grew up with sports.
No, I agree with you. Listen, and we talked about this on Thursday because I brought up the T-shirt bet and the hat bet with a lot of the LSU fans, and we're, you know, all these other things going on. I can't do it with Auburn. I mean, I just can't. I can't do it with Auburn. I probably can't do it with Tennessee. LSU, I'm fine doing a bet like that. Ole Miss, Texas A&M, you throw them out there, I'll do that. Georgia, I'll do a bet like that. Auburn's just kind of a different thing. By the way, you can tell this is new school and these are young guys because everybody's got a hand signal nowadays. You notice that?
A lot of signals,
You see these recruiting pictures, these guys are like at the opening finals of the regionals, and everybody's got a hand, everybody's got a hand signal.
Maybe I do like this.
I don't know what it is.
Like a B and an A.
I don't know what it is, and everybody's got one of those hand signals.
Dale Stafford says most people don't seem to realize that most Alabama and Auburn players are friends. Who cares if they work out together? Listen, here is why this matters to me, and I'm not telling you this is the worst thing in the world. I'm just telling you, my opinion on this. You don't want to beat your friend as bad as you want to beat your enemy. And all this hugging and kissing that goes on after every sporting event, from college to professionals, that does impact the competition to a certain point. You want to beat your enemy more than you want to beat your friend. So wanting to win as badly as you can, wanting to compete at the highest level you can, means viewing the other guy on the other side of the court, other side of the field, or other side of the whatever playing surface you're on. There is a requirement that you see that guy as some sort of enemy. If that's your hashtag family, you're not playing as hard against that guy. Neither guy is.
Well, I understand that, but I'll go back to the other side of the fence. Like I was saying, I'm just, I'm half kidding about this. It's different when it's a quarterback and a running back. Like, I understand if you're saying, boy, I'm gonna make sure I do one-on-ones with this corner. I'm at wide receiver, and I'm gonna do one-on-ones with an Auburn corner. Can you imagine, Calvin Ridley and Carlton Davis going at it, last offseason saying you're gonna work it, and they're probably getting each other better. But you're right, there is kind of a thing where these guys aren't matching up against each other. Jalen Hurts isn't trying to run Cam Martin over in the open field, and vice versa. So. It is what it is. I don't love it, like I said, but I think that's just the kind of old school coming out of both of them.
Yeah, you talked about being friends with the Auburn guys when you got the Senior Bowl, but I doubt you're doing like the bro hug thing after an Iron Bowl game while you're still playing. You're not doing that maneuver.
No, I didn't go talk to many people at midfield after the Bama games I played in.
Dan Riggins brings up a good point. This is on YouTube, and I can't deny this is a good point. He says a lot of opposing coaches are friends. Look at Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp. I will admit that there is a level of hypocrisy here that I don't fault Muschamp and Kirby for being friends the same way I might fault Cam Martin and Jalen Hurts for being friends. I won't deny that.
Yeah.
I guess the deal here is that coaching careers last a lot longer. And, there are only a few people in the world who understand what Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp go through, or any other coaches that might be friends. You're only a college player for like 3 or 4 years, and you got 85 guys that wear your uniform to be friends with. Kirby and Muschamp don't have that many choices of whom to be friends with.
Yeah, T. Baker Kane, I think, brings up a good point in the Facebook comment section. I've always wanted to compete against friends more, put more work into competing, and that way bragging rights, and you can show that you're better against friends. Maybe there's an angle to that. I don't know.
Tyler Mann says BA's probably watching some WWE too. In other words, these guys are friends off the outside the ring, but they pretend like they're not. Yeah. All I need you to do is put on a good show, right? At least pretend to view the other side as an adversary. I'm telling you, watch these NBA playoff games and it's all over. It's nothing but a bunch of hugs, and all these guys are like, teaming up to go play with each other the next year on the same team.
Yeah. You'd rather have the guy that's like blowing in LeBron's ear. Who is that guy? Somebody's like just
for the Pacers, yeah. Like back in the days of Jordan, he was vanquishing foes. He wasn't, out partying with these guys. He wasn't friends
with much of them, was he? It's changed, man. It's different day and age.
Let us do item number 2 here on our SEC Country Live. Actually, before we move on, let me tell you this. Speaking of Alabama Crimson Tide here, big news to announce that coming up on Monday, if you are a fan of the Alabama Crimson Tide, you're going to love this. From time to time, you hear me talk about Dog Nation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. You can listen to it. You're watching the Dog Nation video channels. Well, Alabama fans, we got a brand new video show coming your way on the Alabama video channels as well here associated with SEC Country. And who's going to host it? Well, no better source to do that than my good friend Mike Johnson. It starts Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, correct?
That's correct.
1 p.m. Eastern or noon Central for those of you there in the Yellowhammer State. You can check out Mike on the same, Alabama video channels associated with SEC Country. You can check out Mike doing that. I'm super excited to be being a part of the organizations that's bringing this to all the Alabama fans out there.
I appreciate it, man. And we have come a long way on this show in the last 15 plus months now. And this has been a long time in the works. And to be able to get to bring out my Homer side, I don't have to be objective. I don't have to tell you how good Georgia is. The Homer is coming out in me coming up on this Bama show, 1 o'clock Eastern. I hope all the Bama fans that are in the SEC Country Live comment section will get a chance to tune in. 1 o'clock, like I said, starts Monday, May 21st.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that. And listen, I do love the freedom. I always say this, if you're not a Georgia fan, you would hate Dog Nation Daily. If you're an Alabama fan, you're going to hate what Mike's doing every single day. But if you are an Alabama fan, You're absolutely going to love it because it's a much deeper dive into what's going on in the Alabama Crimson Tide. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, we're going to cover a lot of different topics. Obviously, all the Bama stuff. We're going to have some interviews with Chris Kirshner and Mark Burnett. We're going to do a lot of Bama recruiting stuff, a little bit of NFL update kind of things, and as always, going to have the Crimson glasses on.
And by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, the SEC Country Live official account, just put a link in there for that. I'm sure the same thing's going to be on Facebook too. So we are really excited about that. Let's move on for now, though, and do item number 2 here on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. And this could potentially be really big news for Tennessee if the cryptic stuff that we're hearing kind of moves in the direction that Vols fans want it to go. And it's one of the reasons why we're dealing with it so early in the show here today. Let me start with Jeremy Pruitt, who was in Chattanooga doing the Big Orange Caravan Tour, and he's getting ready to speak to the fans there. But before he speaks to the fans, he speaks to the media. Our Mike Griffith asked Coach Pruitt a question about some thought that some of the guys that he was dissatisfied with in the orange and white spring game, maybe they're not starters anyway, that the new influx of either graduate transfer talent like the quarterback Keller Christ or incoming freshmen, you might supplant some of those guys as starters, and there may be as many as a dozen guys who were thought of as starters during the orange and white game that don't actually start this upcoming season. And Pruitt's not so sure about that, but he certainly looks forward to seeing competition this summer. Here's Jeremy Pruitt.
Well, it's going to be hard for me to gauge on who could be a starter and who can't when there's 30 guys that wasn't on our team that didn't participate in spring. So I know the good thing is there'll be lots of competition.
The number he uses there is 30 guys on the Tennessee roster that didn't participate in spring practice. I'm assuming that of the 30, he's counting maybe the best player in the entire Tennessee roster. I'm going to actually remove the maybe. The best player on the Tennessee roster is last year's left tackle Trey Smith, who has been dealing with a medical issue. But Smith recently tweeted and then deleted a tweet that might be saying that help is on the way here for the Vols. The Barstool Rocky Top, the Tennessee account on Barstool captured this. Smith says, "Clear now." That tweet, according to Barstool Rocky Top, was later deleted, but that's the kind of cryptic message that gets Tennessee fans excited. At this same event in Chattanooga, the Knoxville News-Sentinel reports Jeremy Pruitt saying to Tennessee fans that Trey's working really hard right now. Somebody told me that Trey's been in the weight room every single day. At another point, Mike, let me give you one more of these quotes from Jeremy Pruitt here, who says that Trey Smith is feeling great and ready to go to work. It's that last line that might get the most attention here. What do you make of this? Do you expect Trey Smith to now be playing this fall?
I definitely do. After seeing that, and it is a cryptic tweet. Listen, it was sent at 11:10 p.m. and then gets deleted afterwards, and Barstool Rocky Top picks it up, and Tennessee fans are sitting there going, what do you make of this?
Right.
And it does come on the heels of Jeremy Pruitt speaking at the Big Orange Caravan and saying, hey, listen, this guy's been in the weight room daily. He's ready to go to work. He's just waiting to get cleared. I can't take this as anything but incredible news for Tennessee fans. I really can't. And I know that obviously you're waiting on an announcement. Maybe it'll be let out sooner than later. Maybe they weren't ready for it to go public. Maybe he's not exactly cleared right now. He's just on the verge of being cleared. But anything close to good news right now surrounding Trey Smith, who is the best player on Tennessee's roster, is great news for Tennessee fans. All of a sudden, that offensive line that looked extremely shaky throughout the spring, even though they performed well in the spring game, Trey Smith locks in and is possibly the best player on your roster and an all-SEC caliber lineman.
Teresa Lowry on the Facebook comment section says, I don't care. It's a coach that we've needed. Obviously, Teresa's excited about Jeremy Pruitt. But in the case of Trey Smith, though, in that first year for Jeremy Pruitt, you've got to be able to provide some sort of clue that Tennessee as a program is heading in the right direction. You got to pull an upset against somebody or win a collection of the games that Tennessee's sort of supposed to win. Remember, this was a winless team in the SEC a year ago. Without Trey Smith playing in 2018, I think somehow they'd be even worse than they were last season. I think that Trey Smith is a crucial piece just to keep the Vols from going out there and embarrassing themselves. You can put some sort of offense together if you've got Trey Smith protecting the blind side for a guy like, say, Keller Christ. But without Trey Smith, it becomes really hard to build an offensive line.
I think it changes your offense. I really do. Like I know that we've gone back and forth. Keller Christ, Jared Garantano. There's all these different names being thrown around. Who's going to win the quarterback position? I think with Trey Smith at left tackle, it gives you the opportunity to at least try to put Keller Christ. Every time we've come up with this quarterback conversation at Tennessee, I've said, you know what? I don't think the offensive line is going to be very good. Why would you want a statue behind this offensive line? Put in a guy that can move around and make plays with his legs. All of a sudden, Trey Smith gets locked in at left tackle. You can switch some other things around, shore up some other spots. And I think Keller Christ becomes a viable option. He's a smart guy with a good arm who can run a pro-style offense that Jeremy Pruitt wants to run. He can throw over the top. He can throw the deep ball. I really think it changes really the outlook on what this offense could be this year.
Let me get a good comment. It's actually a question from Paul Raymond over on Facebook, who asked, I think to both of us, who do you think Tennessee can upset this season? Because I think that one of those big wins is a crucial springboard for 2019. And do you have an opinion? I'm going to pull up the Tennessee schedule here. It's not a Georgia. Have to go to Auburn. That feels like a tough game. Alabama is another upset opportunity. I don't feel like they're beating Alabama even in Knoxville.
Yeah.
How about at South Carolina, a program that's given Tennessee some fits?
Yeah.
Does that feel like the kind of game that Tennessee could maybe go on the road and play well in? Obviously, Williams-Brice is a pretty tough stadium, but does that feel like that kind of game?
I definitely think that that's one you're probably circling, because the fact of the matter is this: when you're a Tennessee fan and you look at it and you think upsets, you don't want to circle Vanderbilt as an upset. You don't want to circle Kentucky as an upset. Some of these games, your pride won't let you circle as an upset. The South Carolina game goes firmly in that category this year, because South Carolina will be favored. I think it's going to take a team that's not as strong on the offensive and defensive lines. I don't know that South Carolina will be that way in the trenches this year, and I think that gives Tennessee the opportunity. Tennessee played very well against South Carolina last year when South Carolina was very good, so I think the opportunity lies within them.
Bradley Bush on Facebook says they can beat Florida, and that's really probably a better answer, because if I had to guess, even in Neyland Stadium, my guess is Tennessee's a slight underdog to Florida.
I think so, too.
So that's the kind of game that, does Trey Smith, if he plays, does that give Tennessee a much better chance of beating Florida? I don't think there's any doubt that Smith's presence, if that tweet proves true, and if Jeremy Pruitt's somewhat cryptic statements prove true, Trey Smith just gave Tennessee a much better chance of beating Florida in a game where the Gators are probably a slight favorite, even in Knoxville.
Yeah, no, I agree. And listen, I think that Florida's going to be favored. I don't know by how much, but I think Florida will be favored. That's the 4th week of the season, September 22nd. Now, go back a month or two with me right now. Before C.C. Jefferson gets injured and before you start thinking that Trey Smith might be cleared, that looks like an absolute mismatch. When you talk about C.C. Jefferson rushing off the edge against whoever Tennessee is going to have lined up at left tackle, all of a sudden that flips now, doesn't it? All of a sudden you're looking for the depth. Can C.C. Jefferson get healthy in the first month of the season to really kind of put his imprint? That's something that could definitely switch the way you think about that game.
So, by the way, I mentioned point spreads and underdogs and things like that. We didn't make this like an official topic on today's show because I really didn't even know how many of y'all even cared enough to talk about this. But in the old days of the program, we used to do the old BA Q&A. Right. If y'all want to weigh in the comment section on the Supreme Court ruling that now opens the doors for states to legalize sports betting, I'd be curious to know what you think about that. We didn't do this as an official topic today. I'm not even sure how much time we're going to spend on it. But if y'all want to weigh in on that, we may talk about that in the comment section a little bit on the program here today.
How about you? A Sanford Stadium gambling window, kind of like horse races when you find yourself?
Look, I'm not necessarily for or against the laws being, opened up in Georgia, the state where I live in, or other SEC states. I'm sort of, I guess, somewhat libertarian on this. I'm fine with it being legal. I'm not sure it's going to have a huge impact on my life one way or another, if that makes sense.
I can see it having a huge impact in Atlanta. I don't think this is going to be an issue in Alabama. Alabama doesn't have a lottery. Alabama doesn't have a lot of things. But I can see casinos opening up, say, Sundress Park, maybe down by the Mercedes-Benz Dome. Maybe when you come in for an SEC title game, you get to stop by somewhere and make a little bit of bet. I think in that way, you're talking about something that opens up a little bit. I'm not sure, and that'll be interesting to see in the comment section how many people are actually interested in doing it.
I guess if I could give you one quick football, football-based opinion on this, it would be this. I've read some of y'all's football opinions in the comment section every day. None of y'all need to be betting.
And they're saying the same thing to us.
I know.
They're saying the same thing to us.
I'm totally kidding.
You're sitting there going, yeah, Mike, go ahead and gamble on Florida all year long.
Absolutely. All right, let's do item number 3 here. Speaking of Florida, our SEC Country Live first and 10 list. I thought this was sort of an interesting line or two from a columnist over at gridironnow.com about Florida here for 2018 and a thorn in the Gators side that's maybe not one of the rivals that you would typically expect. Still paying attention, as we talked about a little bit last year, to Will Muschamp at South Carolina and maybe kind of wondering what might have been. I thought this was interesting. Let me read a couple sentences to you from gridironnow.com. Ryan Green's the writer. It says, not only can you argue that South Carolina is in better shape than the Gators as we sit today, it's hard to argue the opposite, at least in the short term. Will Muschamp and South Carolina beat Florida in 2017? Will Muschamp and South Carolina are currently out recruiting Florida for the class of 2019. And if Will Muschamp and South Carolina were to beat Florida in 2018, it would be another reminder that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. That's Ryan Green from gridironnow.com. And Obviously, one of the reasons why I bring this onto the show is it is reflective of the things that I've said in the past. I think that Will Muschamp's a better coach than Dan Mullen. I think that Florida's in a terrible spot because they had to fire him. Things had just gone too badly there at Florida. You can't lose to Georgia Southern and keep your job as the Florida coach. But I do think if Muschamp was the coach at Florida right now, they'd be positioned for better success than they are under Dan Mullen. I think he is a better recruiter. I think he's building something in South Carolina that right now as a program rivals what's going on at Florida, and that should not be the case. Florida, based on its history and significance, should always be the bigger program. Right now, to the naked eye, you really can't tell the difference. If anything, South Carolina is a little bit ahead here at the moment. I really, unfortunately for Gators fans, agree with almost everything that the Gridiron Now writer had to say there.
Yeah, listen, the outlook, I've been very positive about what I feel like is going on at Florida under Dan Mullen right now, but it is hard to look past some of the comments and really start to weigh this, because the bottom line is that Florida, for everything you think they're going to do well in recruiting this year, at some point it's got to start showing up. And Florida is ranked 20th right now in recruiting. I think there's maybe 7 other SEC teams ahead of Florida, which just shouldn't be that way. I understand, it's kind of backloading. There's a lot of people probably waiting to see what happens on the field under Dan Mullen this fall. A lot of different things going on. I mean, they're in on some big recruits. They're in on Chris Steele, John Dunmore, Jaden Davis, Nathan Pickering. A lot of those guys are showing up to campus. Get these guys to commit, and I think that's what I don't blame Florida at all for firing Will Muschamp. He lived and died by Kurt Roper. They had to make the decision. But now when you do look at Florida under another rebuilding regime, and the fact that Will Muschamp seems to be hitting his stride in a lot of different ways at South Carolina, it's hard to argue some of these points.
Bo Molinari says, 100% agree, BA. South Carolina deserves all the airtime I'll give Florida. Bo always thinks we overtalk Florida. George Medina, though, says Muschamp's culture at Florida was amazing. If he would have kept Urban Meyer's spread offense, he would still be there. He switched too late. Nothing but love for him. And that's honestly what it comes down to. Yeah. Muschamp could not find the offense. I don't believe that's because he's a deficient offensive coach as much as I just think it was bad luck. He had a 5-star quarterback in Jeff Driscoll, and it just didn't work out. He made hires that at the time seemed like good hires, and they just didn't work out. It is very important for a defensive-minded head coach to figure out the offense. It's the reason why Kirby Smart won the SEC in 2017. He got lucky with his quarterback, got lucky with his offensive coordinator. Will Muschamp is the other end of that spectrum.
Yeah, I don't know if bad luck even played into it, in my opinion. I mean, you have Jeff Driscoll. He ended up being pretty good at wherever he went, NC State or Louisiana Tech or something.
He went to Louisiana Tech.
Louisiana Tech.
But he just wasn't Florida good.
But he wasn't very good. And I don't know if bad luck plays as much into that as, listen, you had to fire your OC at South Carolina this last year, same guy. And so we're going to get into Brian McClendon a little bit later talking about South Carolina, but I think that Will Muschamp grows as a coach, and I think the first clue to saying that is the fact that he was able to move on from Kurt Roper. Wasn't willing to do it at Florida. That's not so much bad luck as not being willing to make the moves.
Austin Greer says, you're crazy. Muschamp, he's even close to the coach that Mullen is. Drew Stanley says, I don't know why you're so high on Muschamp. He will never be good enough to win a national championship. Drew, what I would say in response to that is he may be coaching in a program where winning a national championship is virtually impossible, and unfortunately at South Carolina, that might be the case. What I'm trying to say is if Muschamp could have been just good enough to keep his job at Florida, Gators could still be in the national championship business right now. Dan Mullen's not winning a national championship at Florida, though.
Well, and let's talk about Muschamp.
But Will Muschamp could, because he was recruiting at a level that national championship programs recruit.
Exactly. Let's talk about Jim McElwain going to Atlanta in back-to-back years. Yeah. That was Will Muschamp driven. That was all defensively driven. Those are guys that came in to play for Will Muschamp. That's why Jim McElwain was able to do the things he did. So it's hard because I think that Florida, in a lot of ways, is in a good spot. But right now, where it sits, where I always sit here and say, boy, Tua shouldn't be the second-ranked quarterback. You got to show me on the field. Well, guess what? Dan Mullen has to show me on the field at a bigger university that he can carry over things from Mississippi State. It's not a slam dunk. Do I think he'll do it? Absolutely. Do I think he'll end up having more success at Florida than Muschamp ever has at South Carolina? Absolutely. But we're in kind of that show me phase of that argument.
Hardwired to Self-Destruction on YouTube says if Mullen was still at Mississippi State, he would be praised. But Hardwired, you understand this. This is all about the step up in competition when you go to Florida. Mississippi State's the kind of place where winning records plenty. That's enough. At Florida, it's either SEC championship or national championship, and that's not good enough. In fact, when Scott Strickland brought Dan Mullen in as the Florida head coach, Strickland, in terms of announcing him and sort of introducing him to Florida fans, spoke about the expectations that Mullen has for that program. Here is what Strickland had to say about that.
You put a high bar and you don't reach it, you're worried about being criticized. And Dan, his confidence is at such a level that he knows the expectations here are going to be to win championships. So don't hide from it. Talk about it. He's going to be judged. All of our coaches here are judged based on their ability to win at that level.
So, I mean, the problem with what Strickland says there, in terms of that's the way that he's judged, it's the high bar, he embraces all of that. If you can't leap well past South Carolina, then you're kidding yourself by even talking about championships. And right now, South Carolina does stand as a reminder of kind of what Florida isn't doing.
Well, and here's what I'll say in Dan Mullen's defense, though. We talk about, this came up with Tennessee and Jeremy Pruitt last week, how you're going to be judged by what you do against your rivals. I don't think that that's the case at South Carolina right now. I don't think South Carolina is in a position to say, boy, if you don't beat Clemson in the next year or two, or boy, if you don't beat
Georgia. That's a pretty high bar right now.
That's a very high bar, and I don't think Will Muschamp's being held against that. I think Dan Mullen absolutely will. I think Dan Mullen in the first 3 years will be expected to beat Florida State. I think that kind of starting over with Willie Taggart alongside you, I think they're going to be expected to do those things. And I don't think that Will Muschamp's back will be against the wall in that way.
Final comment on this, it belongs to G. Grace on YouTube, who, by the way, has an Alabama profile pic here, but G. Gray says Mullen will be scary good at Florida. You can hate and hope against all you want. It'll happen. Florida has the best high school players in the country. So it's pretty interesting to hear an Alabama fan emphatically high on Dan Mullen, which is a pretty interesting retort to what I was saying.
Yeah, that is interesting too. And I think a lot of Bama fans actually do feel that way. I mean, look at what the Mississippi State and Alabama game was last year. I think that you started to see when Dan Mullen had the players, they can be very good at Mississippi State. Mm-hmm. To me, if I'm going to chip away at Dan Mullen's armor, I think you have to chip away at the consistency, the loss to South Alabama, some of the close games that probably shouldn't have been close at Mississippi State. So I think that he is an incredible coach. I think he'll be great at Florida. Will the consistency be there over the long run is really the only argument I think you can ask.
Jamie Blanton says, BA, you just earned a spot on the hot seat with Mike. I bet we're playoff bound by 2020. Jamie's a South Carolina fan. He says Muschamp is about to be a thorn for a lot of people, including Mike. Take it back while you can. I do love Jamie's passion about the Gamecocks here. Listen, Jamie fits right in with the rest of our commenters in terms of being very, very high on his program, and I do love that.
Yeah, and listen, I hope nothing for but the best for Jamie and Will Muschamp in South Carolina. But if I'm just keeping the objective eye, I'm just not sure it's there for me just yet at South Carolina.
Michael Kleiber, who's a Mississippi State fan, says, hey, BA, if Florida's so much better than State, why do they try to take our staff? State will have more success the next 10 years than Florida. How about Michael weighing in on Mississippi State here? You got some crossfire going on here. I love that.
Yeah, I do too.
We'll see how that plays out. Rick Keene also says, BA, I really don't know how you say these things with any confidence. The things that Dan has done at Mississippi State, a school that had never done anything. So we will see how all this plays out. Really good commentary kind of coming in here. And we'll keep the comments going here today on SEC Country Live. For now, though, let's move on to item number 4 here on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. And do you remember when you made your move to the NFL from the Alabama Crimson Tide? You played for the Atlanta Falcons, and if memory serves correct, you wore 78 for Alabama, but you were 79 in the NFL. Is that right?
That's right.
Did you get any kind of choice in your number or anything like that?
I absolutely did not. This was your, and 78 is retired in Atlanta. It's I think it's Mike Ken.
Is that right? Big Mike Ken.
The Hall of Famer that
I
wore
should probably know
in
that.
Atlanta.
So, I'm a lifelong
there was never the choice of 78, so they did move me to 79. Never asked me.
One thing about being an offensive lineman, though, is offensive linemen all essentially wear the same numbers.
Right.
What is it? It's like 50s through 70s.
Yeah, and in Atlanta it's different too. They hardly ever give out 50 numbers to offensive linemen. They save those for the linebacking core for whatever reason. All the 50s in Atlanta are linebackers.
What's different in college football for the skill position guys is a lot of those guys love the single-digit numbers, including Darius Guice, who wore number 5 at LSU. But moving on to the NFL, running backs can't wear the single-digit numbers. At least I don't think they can. You can't wear those single-digit numbers. So Guice had to get a new number. We was on Steve Saban's radio show talking about his number that he is going to wear, the number 29, and kind of how that all came to be. Here is Guice explaining his new NFL jersey with the Washington Redskins.
I'm excited, man. I'm too pumped. Can't keep a smile off my face.
You can wear 29.
Yes, sir.
And now tell me about that number. Everyone's number means something to them.
You know, it's crazy. I didn't have any options. So that number was just kind of thrown at me. So I didn't really get any say-so.
Hold on a second. You can't wear 5 in the pros.
Not at all.
So what would have been, you said you didn't have a choice. 29 was the only one.
Right.
What did you want?
To be honest, I didn't really care what number I got. Like I didn't come in with a mindset, what number I'm gonna pick. Like it really didn't matter. Whenever they gave me the options, which was like 3 options, it was either 29, 31, or 38.
So I know what Guice is trying to do here. He's trying to play the card of, hey, I'm just here to work. I'm not worried. Just put a number on my back. I'm going to go out there and play for the name on the front of the jersey as opposed to the name on the back of the jersey, blah, blah, blah. I get what I'm doing. But how disappointed are you when there's no story behind the jersey? And how disappointed do you think this host is when there's no story behind the 29? Don't you kind of want to hear that, hey, when I was growing up, man, I got 29 lashes one day, and ever since then I said, I'm going to be the one doing the lashing from then on out. Are you a little disappointed there's no story behind the 29?
I'm like exactly opposite of what you're saying right now. Everybody's got a story. And you do. You'll see rookies, man. I'm going to try to get into my 5, or it don't matter what number you're wearing, man. Go in and do the work. I've been a fan of Darius Guice. I'm just telling you, this makes me 10 times more of a fan of his. I absolutely love this. What are you laughing at here?
Danny McClain, who we have not heard from a lot lately, who has some good zingers every now and then, says the 29 stands for the number of yards he got during his career against Alabama.
Damn, that's tough.
That's tough. When Danny McClain comes, he comes in with both feet.
Yeah, he comes in swinging, man.
Listen, there's no doubt about that. But I like the idea of the having the story behind it.
It's so played out to me. I mean, this is gonna we talked about Jake Fromm and his brother, how that's gonna be a story for years to come. That's to me what the jersey. 9 teams passed on me, so I wore number 9. Or get over it. Get on the field, do whatever you got to do, run tough. This makes me more of a Darius Guice fan. Just listen, he's in such a good mood. The last time we talked about Darius Guice, he was in such a down mood about what happened in the NFL draft. Yeah. People asking questions about his personal life. How much does he really love the game? He's in such a good mood. He gets on there and says, you know what? I didn't really care. It is what it is. I'm just going to run the football.
Esteban Estevez says the 29 stands for the 29 touchdowns he's going to get during his rookie season. Maybe that's the case. And I guess that's the point I'm kind of building to. And the truth is, I'm having fun with this. But when you hear him in a good mood there, does it sound to you like whatever those draft day questions were, whether this was just sort of cloak and dagger stuff by their NFL teams trying to smear him so he'd fall in the draft, or if there were legitimate character concerns about guys, does it sound like that's sort of behind him now and he's ready to be a guy contributing to the Washington Redskins? I certainly think they're really glad to have him.
No, I think so. I think that's exactly what we're talking about in terms of Darius Guice, because the bottom line is this. Darius Guice is a football player. He's not a suit wearer. He's not a stage goer. He's not a put on a shirt. He's a football player. And now he gets to go back to doing what he knows how to do. He doesn't have to, go through all these interviews. He doesn't have to, talk to all these newspapers. Obviously doing a radio show, but he's all smiles. And so I think that makes him comfortable. And I think Darius Guice being comfortable in the NFL is going to be a scary thing for some teams.
All right, out of number 5 here on our SEC Country Live, 1st and 10 list. So Chris Lowe goes on the Paul Feinbaum show and makes a pretty interesting statement about Alabama coach Nick Saban and his future there with the Crimson Tide. And apparently Lowe, after having recently talked to Saban, feels very confident that Saban's going to be sticking around Tuscaloosa for a while. He says, Nick took it a step further with me, saying it's something I couldn't even imagine, me not coaching football. So now Chris Lowe says, I think the guy's going to coach well into his 70s. That's Chris Lowe, a very well-connected reporter speaking on the Paul Feinbaum show last week. And for me, this is personally frustrating. Not because I want Saban to leave. I don't have an opinion about that one way or another. But because this just feels like ESPN doing the bidding of Alabama and Nick Saban here. Why don't you just do a bigger recruiting commercial for, obviously the message that Saban is going to try to put forth to the class of 2019 recruits is he's going to be at Alabama for another 10 years because that guarantees in their mind that he's going to be there for their full 4 years here. Whether that's true or it's not. I think the way that the media treats Saban with zero skepticism about something that we just really haven't seen a lot. There haven't been that many coaches coach into their 70s at the same place. It's happened a couple of times, but it doesn't happen very much. The fact that Chris Lowe just sort of laps this up like a bowl of milk is, to me, a little frustrating.
Well, I think if you're frustrated by it, you're partially admitting that people are recruiting against Alabama, saying he's not going to be there longer. We've heard so many stories. There's been stories come out of people that are inside some of these programs saying, boy, there's recruits coming out saying, Nick Saban's going to retire. There's a couple of Nick Saban disciple coaches that say, I know Nick. I know he's hanging it up.
What are you trying to say?
That's true. I've read that. I think it was on ESPN. And I don't think it's Kirby Smart at all, but I would point to maybe Jimbo Fisher. I'm just saying that I think that's probably what we're hearing right now. And so, you can call it ESPN lapping it up or delivering the message all you want to, but the fact of the matter is I think that Nick Saban's earned the right to pick when he's going to go out. I don't think that Chris Lowe's in a spot to kind of pick him out about it.
Joel Hayes says, this is on YouTube, Saban's the healthiest coach out there, running around at practice, takes great care of himself. He'll coach 10 more years. Bowden and Paterno easily did it. First of all, Bowden and Paterno didn't easily do it.
Absolutely not.
They may have done it. They didn't easily do it.
I used to hear stories about, I had a buddy that played at Penn State. He talked about what Joe Paterno's bumper looked like. He said every day he'd pull in the parking lot, he'd smash the wall, had to throw it in reverse, he'd kind of back up. He'd be right around practicing a golf cart for 30 minutes, and then he'd have to head out.
I shouldn't be laughing.
I don't think he did it easily. But it is tough. I mean, I will admit that. No, it takes, as locked in as Nick Saban is, I think that the first sign that he's losing a little bit of it, I think that's when he steps away. Now, I don't think that Nick Saban knows when that comes. I don't even know if he'll be able to identify it himself. Yeah. But going into your 70s and staying that sharp as Nick Saban is, to where he has everything dialed down to the 60-second mark, I think it's going to be tough for him.
I mean, plus you've also got, a very influential spouse here. And, the idea that, Saban, may talk about he doesn't know what his life would be like without coaching. I have no doubt he probably feels that way. I'm sure Miss Terry has some plans for him.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's got a honey-do list as long as my arm in terms of what she'd like to see him do post-coaching life. And I mean, just to be blunt here, she's not going to let him coach, I believe, until he becomes like a true lifer in this profession, and his sort of the best days of his life are sort of given to one more year at Alabama. Yeah. She wants, I would imagine, to have to coach around the house.
I disagree with you because I look at Nick Saban and I think that he's going to drive her crazy. He's going to drive her absolutely bananas when he hangs up his coaching shoes. He's going to want to do something. I mean, think about it. The guy works, 15-hour days right now? He says he gets like an hour at home to watch TV with Miss Terry when he gets home. He's going to drive her crazy if he doesn't have anything to do.
But do you see my point? Even if you don't agree with me, or even if you like the fact this is going on, this is the same thing that ESPN does with Coach K and Coach Cal and all these institutional coaches in college sports that they lionize. And they do documentaries about them, and they're constantly showcasing their practices, and they're making them out to be larger than life. And they eventually become part of the recruiting machine for Kentucky basketball or for Duke basketball, or in this case, Alabama football. When Chris Lowe goes on the Feinbaum show and says, you know what, I think Nick Saban's going to coach another 10 years. If you don't think that Alabama's not cutting up that clip and playing that for 2019 recruits, so ESPN now has essentially become an ally for Alabama's recruiting efforts. I just don't think that's right.
I hate that you feel that way. I mean, I really do. I think he's just earned the ability to do that. When you win championships like he has, I think that ESPN's going to lap that up. I don't think I think they would. I think people would be more upset if they came in and said, well, you know what? I'm calling BS on Saban because he's coaching into his 70s, because I think he has earned that right to where ESPN should lionize him. I mean, he's, in my opinion, the greatest coach in the history of college football.
Now, Dwayne Rourke, though, who is an Arkansas fan, not an Alabama fan, says that kind of coverage doesn't bother me at all. He's earned it. It is almost like the basketball star, and this is the second time I've used an NBA analogy on today's show, which is somewhat weird, but the basketball superstar that gets all the calls at the rim.
Right.
This is ESPN giving that favorable coverage to Alabama. It does make things harder on the rest of the SEC. You may say he's earned it, but listen. I mean, in this case, ESPN just greasing the wheels for more of this for Alabama.
Boy, this is going to be a fun topic Monday on Roll Tide on Roll Tide Daily. You can tune in to see what I really think about this.
Now, listen, I want to just say here for a second that he's already learned how to be a true pro. Did you see the way that he just pivoted right into the promotional deal here?
1 Eastern Monday.
Yeah, really excited about that. That's going to be an awesome. And in all honesty, obviously everybody that's going to be watching, listening to that show is going to hate everything about what I'm saying right now. But I could not be more excited about that show. Mike, you've earned the chance to do it. You're obviously a great partner here on SEC Country Live, and it's going to be really fun watching that show grow right there alongside Dog Nation Daily and the other shows we've got coming down the pipe.
And I'm sure that topic number one of these days coming up soon will be, you never believe what Brandon Adams said today on Dog Nation Daily. And it's going to be a lot of fun, man. I really am excited about the show. I'm excited to get all the great Alabama fans in the comment section to hang out every day.
By the way, before we close up shop on this topic, let me give you Nick Saban his own words here as far as how long he plans on coaching. Well, he told Alabama fans in Tuscaloosa, and you were there for it back in January, that he's got a lot more plans for a lot more winning.
And to the players that are coming back, get ready for the challenges of the future, and let everybody know that we're not finished.
I mean, listen, he said it himself right there, right?
He's delivering that message. And I agree with you, too, because this is something, honestly, I think you've opened my eyes to a little bit more than I probably did when we started the show. He's talking to recruits. I mean, he's talking. He's not talking to that crowd. He's absolutely speaking straight to recruits right now. And that video has probably been on playback all year in the recruiting section.
By the way, before we move on, Greg Steele, who's a Florida fan, who's always stirring up trouble, every single day he's stirring up trouble about something, says Mike is leaving BA for better things. First of all, don't start that rumor. Mike's not leaving SEC Country Live. I do two shows a day. Mike can do 2 shows a day.
Yeah, listen, man, we're going to be 30 minutes. We're going to get the bullet points, but I'm not going anywhere on this.
Mike's not going anywhere. Don't.
I love you guys too much.
Don't start that rumor, Greg. Come on now. All right, let me do item number 6 here on our SEC Country Live first and 10 list. So we played you some audio earlier from Tennessee coach Jeremy Pruitt as a part of the Big Orange Caravan as it rolled through Chattanooga at what sounded like a bowling alley or like a arcade somewhere like that.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, speaking there with the fans of the Tennessee Vols there that night was not just Tennessee coach Jeremy Pruitt, but Tennessee athletic director Philip Fulmer also on hand as well. And our Mike Griffith, our colleague who covers the Vols for SEC Country, asked the former coach Fulmer, now AD Fulmer, what his message was going to be to Tennessee fans there in the building that night. And here is what Fulmer said he came to say.
Well, there's a message generally about the athletic department, that we're stable and we're moving forward and we're working together. And Jeremy is starting in a place that we've never been before, so he's got a long way to go. When I took over, we were kind of here and went to there, and he's, down here somewhere with a long way to go. So patience, I'm preaching patience to some degree.
So stability and patience, that's what he's there. Now, only 2 problems with that if you're a Tennessee fan, and this is one of those deals where Vols fans are going to agree with me and that they don't like me. When you have to talk about stability, that means you don't have it.
Right.
And when you have to ask for patience, most people that ask for it usually don't get it. When the waiter comes back to your table and says there's going to be about 10 more minutes on your steak, I'm asking for your patience.
Right.
The patience is usually expired by the time that goes around. How are Tennessee fans going to respond to this message of patience and stability?
Well, I think it's an uphill climb. We've had Tennessee fans in the comment section for some time now, dating all the way back to the coaching search, that you preach patience, and they say, well, how many times do we have to go through a rebuilding effort? How many times do we have to preach patience? How many times do we have to be patient? This is and this is the 4th coach now after Philip Fulmer has left as his own regime. So where you're preaching patience, to where you want stability, to where you want all these things. I think it's an uphill battle. I think Jeremy Pruitt's probably the right guy in the end to get it done. But by no means do I think that this year is going to be a year where you don't have to have patience. So I think that this year especially, Philip Fulmer's right for preaching it right now. I don't know that who's listening exactly. I think that it might be falling on deaf ears for the most part. But this is one of those years where it is going to be rough.
Well, here's what's bad luck if you're a Tennessee AD trying to preach patience, and here's what's frustrating if you're a Vols fan. You were patient with Butch Jones. You were patient with Derek Dooley. Now you're being asked to be patient with Jeremy Pruitt. I personally believe that Pruitt's probably more worthy of your patience than Butch Jones ever was, and sure as heck as much as Orange Pants Derek Dooley ever was.
Right.
You gave those guys patience. They weren't going to do anything with it. That was just like, a bad investment. That's just, you might as well throw money out the window being patient with those buffoons. But Jeremy Pruitt actually has some recruiting chops. He may actually be able to build a roster one day, but patience is sort of a finite resource. Fulmer's asking for it, but in all honesty, a lot of Tennessee fans would say, we've already given it away. We gave you patience 5 years ago. We gave you patience, in some cases, 10 years ago. That's what's frustrating here is that Pruitt may be a young coach who eventually grows into this role here, but do Vols fans, even if they want to be patient, do they have enough patience still left to give?
Well, and Perry Williams, I think, brings up a great point in the comment section on Facebook. He says he has 6 years. We can't afford to fire another coach. And I think that's a great point of this. I think after the debacle that was this past year, Jeremy Pruitt, more so than not, is going to get the benefit of the doubt in his regime at Tennessee. I think if he's even close. Now, you couldn't do anything with Butch Jones last year. Guy lost every SEC game. It wasn't close. If Jeremy Pruitt's even close, I think he's going to get the opportunity to play out at least his contract, if not get an extension. I don't think that patience will be something that defines Jeremy Pruitt's time in Knoxville.
Nathan Johnson on Facebook says, my patience are thin. Here's the problem with your scenario, or the commenter scenario says you're going to give him 6 years. In the fast-moving world of the SEC right now, where money begats more money and recruits begat more recruits, if you take a half a decade off, you can get buried. I'm talking about it can be a program-changing deal. Folks, back in the 50s and 60s, the service academies that had Heisman Trophy winners. Back in the 20s, the Ivy League teams were really good. History does change. Another 5 years of not being very good, General Neyland might as well be, the face on a $2 bill. I mean, it's going to have no relevance whatsoever to modern recruits or even modern fans for the most part. You can't sit out another half decade if you're Tennessee. The landscape of the SEC will have completely changed, and they will have built a condominium on top of you.
Now, I agree with that. Now, I don't think you can just sit by the wayside. I don't think you can have top 30 recruiting classes and think you're going to last another 5 years. But I guess my point is this. This isn't going to be a Les Miles, Mark Richt, maybe even Will Muschamp style scenario. It's not going to say, boy, we're winning 9 games, but we're not quite getting over the hump, so we need to get rid of this guy. He's not going to be in that scenario, I guess is my point. He's going to be given every opportunity to get over that hump. If he's even close. Like I said, Butch Jones wasn't close. You had to get rid of him. But if Jeremy Pruitt is even close, if he's winning 8, 9, 10 games, he's going to stay at Tennessee for the long run.
Drew Stanley says it sounds like Tennessee's hit Rocky Bottom.
Matt Boyd says you guys forgot to mention Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
Listen, that comes on the heels of a lot of bad things
right
there.
One more quick point on this. You talk about the chasm of sort of the various SEC schools. Nick Saban ain't speaking to any of these spring speaking tour events. He's not going anywhere. Nick Saban doesn't leave his office unless it's to go play golf this time of year. And you got Jeremy Pruitt and Philip Fulmer. Y'all heard the audio. You can hear the pins rattling in the background like the whack-a-mole game.
Right.
Tennessee's got these guys speaking at an arcade or like a bowling alley. I don't even know. It's like a Dave and Buster's. What are they speaking at?
Well,
that's a pretty big chasm of haves and have-nots in terms of how guys get treated.
Well, Nick Saban used to do this. Now I don't think they do Crimson Caravan anymore, but there was a point in time where Nick had to get back out on the, hey, we need money. You know what I'm saying? If you're going to get the facility upgrades that Jeremy Pruitt wants, guess what? You're not going to get him sitting in your office in Knoxville.
Yeah, that's true.
Get out on the trail and talk to people. Chattanooga, we've heard him talk in Memphis. We've heard him talk in Nashville. He's got to burn this thing up. I think he realizes he needs more money in his back pocket.
Item number 7 here in our SEC Country Live first and 10 list. Bad news, I guess, for Florida. It's at least a tough situation to deal with for the moment, even if it doesn't have lasting implications. Incoming 4-star wide receiver Justin Watkins arrested. I guess the details here are this is like a domestic skirmish with a girl that Watkins was apparently dating. Dan Mullen has kind of weighed in on this. Let me show you what Mullen's somewhat, terse statement is. We are aware of the incident with Justin and are still collecting information. That's Dan Mullen via the Tampa Bay Times, the place where I saw that quote. I think the Tampa Bay Times broke the. You're not supposed to be laughing right now.
Terse statement?
It is a terse statement.
Terse statement? Yeah, okay.
That's the right word. It's a short statement.
Possibly so.
What do you make of this? Is this a big deal?
I think it's a bigger deal than Florida fans want to admit. I think at this day and age, the fact that this was an involvement with a female, I think he broke her phone, he kicked her car, he was on a school campus he wasn't supposed to be on. I think that, overall, when Florida fans look at it, they say, boy, this is not really a big deal. Today's day and age, though, this is a big deal because you wonder how far this guy's leash is going to be the next time around.
Yeah.
Once you've opened this door, once you've done this as a Florida signee where you've gone out and gotten arrested and done these things that you shouldn't have been doing, you're not going to get the benefit of the doubt anymore. So he's going to have a short leash once he gets to Florida, and you got to hope that he can actually get this thing turned around.
Well, let me also play a piece of audio from back when Scott Strickland, the Florida athletic director, was talking about removing Jim McElwain from the job. And he's asked some questions about some of those unsubstantiated death threat claims, but there's a phrase that Strickland uses in this quote here that I think is relevant for this issue, for Dan Mullen kind of inheriting this mess here in terms of what Florida was before he got the job. Listen to this and see if you can pick up on the phrase here that I do think has some relevance still for Dan Mullen. Here's Strickland talking about McElwain.
Scott, when did you know this had to be done?
You're constantly evaluating your program, and I don't know if there was any one seminal moment, but it just seemed like this was the time to do it.
Was the tipping point what he said on Monday and the meeting you had with him after that?
It was, this is more than just wins and losses, and I'll just leave it at that.
So it's that last part of the phrase, that McElwain was fired for reasons more than just wins and losses. And McElwain may have told some whoppers. He may have told some lies that got him in some trouble. But there was also a lot of Florida players suspended a season ago. So I'm hearing from some Florida fans in the comment section who say that they don't feel like what Watkins may have done was as serious as what some of the media reports have been. And obviously I'm not there. I don't know about that. But what makes this potentially tough for Florida is what Strickland said about McElwain. He was fired for more than just wins and losses, which means that Dan Mullen's going to be evaluated on more than just wins and losses.
Yeah.
This is a mess for him to clean up, even if Mullen didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, Mullen didn't do anything wrong. And it's like I said, a lot of people in the comment section say, well, he's arrested for trespassing. You got to read farther into that. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm coming down on Florida, because This has nothing to do with Florida. This has to do with this kid personally. But you have to read into it. Like I said, he went onto school property of a school he was not enrolled at. He kicked a car. He destroyed a phone. He did all these different things. I'm not saying you gotta you bury this kid over this, but you have to look into it further. And you're right, at a place like Florida, who had a lot of problems last year with things like this, not things like this, but people being in trouble with the law.
Yeah.
I think the leash gets shorter for a guy like this day and age, and that's not just at Florida, that's anywhere. I think the leash becomes extremely short, and I think Dan Mullen does have to deal with it appropriately.
By the way, in the comments section, James Perkins reminding us that Dan Mullen's record on this is not exactly spotless when it comes to the Jeffrey Simmons thing. Now, for the most part, I'm for second chances. I was for a second chance for Jeffrey Simmons. I'm for a second chance for Justin Watkins, almost for sure, at least based on what I know right now. But this is not Mullen's first run-in with these kind of things before.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, Dan Mullen and the Jeffrey Simmons ordeal was not a good look. And that's why I think that you bring this up when you do talk about Dan Mullen down at Florida, because with what's been happening, this is all over football. I mean, this is a movement. This is all over football. It was not the same when I was in college. People look into things way differently now, especially after the Ray Rice incident and all those things. People look in deeper now. And after the law troubles that you had at Florida last year, I'm just telling you, Dan Mullen's going to be held to a higher standard on this guy. And I think it's going to be a trickle-down effect to this kid that got arrested.
All right, let's do item number 8 here in our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. So one of the touchiest subjects involving players at the college level, recruits at the high school level, is which position you want to play. There are obviously some glamour positions. Defensive backs will tell you they're cornerbacks, they're not safeties. Offensive linemen will tell you they're tackles, not guards. And quarterbacks will tell you they are quarterbacks and they are not playing any other position. And normally, or at least for a significant number of recruits, there's a long line of analysts saying maybe you ought to play a different position. An example of that is Darius Joyner at South Carolina, who Tommy Luganbill, the ESPN analyst, also a recruiting analyst, has said, hey, maybe moving from the quarterback position, stop trying to do that, moving over the wide receiver,
right,
maybe the fastest path for playing time for Joyner there, who's one of the centerpieces of South Carolina's 2018 class. Brian McClendon, though, speaking in Atlanta as a part of the South Carolina speaking tour engagement, seems to have a slightly different take, kind of responding back to what Luganbill had to say. Says about Darius Joyner, I think you have to go until the guy kind of plateaus a little bit. So I don't think that there's a cookie-cutter answer to it. I've heard anything from 2 springs, giving a guy that long. You give a guy 2 springs. But that's kind of unfair for a guy in a case like Darius. In his first spring, he should have been in high school still, which is different from a guy who came in and gets a full year than 2 springs from there. So that is Brian McClendon talking about the situation with Darius Joyner there. And when I hear an offensive coordinator talking that way, the analyst is always eventually right. Anybody who should move to wide receiver in college eventually does.
I mean, he probably should, but I don't think it's as cut and dry as that. I think you have to allow that kid to at least be part of the decision maker there. I just think you do, because what happens is this kid might have looked away from other places. Hey, I believe I'm a quarterback. I want to go to college and I want to play quarterback.
Yeah, South Carolina got him probably by telling him to play quarterback.
Exactly.
They probably, like a lot of these SEC schools do, they also probably knew he wasn't playing quarterback.
Happened when I was at Alabama. Yeah. We recruited a guy named Jimmy Johns who was Mr. Mississippi. Guess how Alabama got him? Hey, you're going to be a quarterback here.
Yeah.
1 weekend of training camp, the guy's playing running back. And that's just the nature of the beast. That's why I feel like the kid should have some say in it. You shouldn't let him show up in a week later and say, boy, you know what? You're going to play wide receiver. I think that if the kid wants to get on the field, and by the way, his easiest path to get on the field is absolutely a wide receiver. So if he gets sold at some point saying, boy, I'm tired of sitting on the sideline being a 3rd string or 4th string quarterback and I want to get on the field, he'll make that decision for himself. But I don't think he should be cut out of the argument.
Yeah, but I don't like the way this kind of story gets framed, where Luganbill's the bad guy for saying the harsh thing. Brian McClendon's the good guy because he's supporting keeping his guy a quarterback. Well, right now they don't need him at wide receiver. And I won't pretend to know Brian McClendon's motives. Maybe he does view him as the next quarterback for the future for South Carolina. I'm guessing that's probably not the case. I'm guessing that you open up the possibility to play the position you want so you can get the guy, and then when he gets there over the course of time, you hope he has the same realization that you described. But this is one of those elements in which I sort of wish the programs would do right by the players more often and give them the honest evaluation. There's going to come a time in the future where these programs are going to want this from the NFL. Tell my players what round they're going to be drafted in so they'll make the best decision for themselves.
Right.
But they're not offering the same level of honesty for the recruits coming into college that they want the players to get on the way to the NFL.
Well, I think the reason that Tom Luginbill is framed as kind of the bad guy in this situation is because he probably doesn't know Dakereon Joyner personally. And I think that that's what Brian McClendon has, their personal relationship. Maybe Dakereon Joyner just absolutely sees himself as a quarterback. Maybe it's a Jalen Hurts style thing. I am a quarterback. Don't matter if you transfer or not, I'm not going to play another position. So then all of a sudden Tom Luginbill's going, boy, if this guy wants to get on the field, if he wants us, let the kid make the decision, though. The kid's the one that's going to have to live with the goals. The kid's the one that's going to have to live with his career in college. If he can make that decision for himself, then he lives with himself easier. If somebody puts him at wide receiver and he doesn't like it, then he switches back to quarterback, and it just becomes a big mess.
All right, sad news here for item number 9 on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. A big name to Ole Miss fans has passed away. Ole Miss letting us know that the former coach and player there for the Rebels in Oxford, Billy Brewer, has passed away. Here was the official announcement from Ole Miss on Twitter. At the age of 83, you see him leading the Rebels onto the field there. And by the way, love those uniforms there from Ole Miss. And I believe he's actually standing next to Chucky Mullins there, who's also a famous name in Ole Miss history. Great picture there of Ole Miss football. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey also sending out his condolences to the Ole Miss family, saying, "We're saddened to learn that Ole Miss football legend Billy Brewer passed away. He helped write the great history of the SEC as a football player and coach." Great line there from Sankey. Our prayers are with his family. He played for the legendary Johnny Vaught. He had a lot of wins there for Ole Miss. They were so close to breaking through in a big way back in an era when I was devouring every SEC game I could get my hands on.
Right.
Every game on TV, I was watching them all, and Billy Brewer was this close to really breaking through in a big way there at Ole Miss. I know he is a big, big part of Rebels history, and I know the folks in Oxford are certainly justifiably mourning today.
Yeah, obviously, and we got a couple of comments in the comment section about him being a great man, and I think this is really a story I think that all SEC fans can kind of identify with. I think that every SEC school kind of has this school lifer, a guy that played there. I mean, Alabama went through this a couple years ago when Mal Moore passed away, a guy who played under Bear Bryant was an AD. I don't think it gets any easier, and I think it's kind of surreal for a guy like me that played at a place like Alabama to look forward to those days when the people you love start to head away.
Nice comments come in the comment section. I think the other thing here is, if we're very honest, Brewer is probably not that big of a name to people who are a little bit younger than me. For instance, you're 30, that's not a huge name for you. But there's also a guy like this on every college campus that's a much bigger deal to the fan base at hand than it is the rest of the SEC. A Tennessee fan, even who's my age, may not know as much about Billy Brewer as Ole Miss fans do, but Tennessee's got their version of that. Everybody's got sort of their favorite son, and Brewer was kind of that favorite son status there for the Ole Miss program.
That's kind of what I was saying. I think that every SEC fan base can kind of identify. I mean, it's for Tennessee fans. 20 years you hope down the road, and Philip Fulmer, or say like a Pat Dye at Auburn. You've got those guys. Matt Luke is one of those guys.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Is an Ole Miss lifer, and so those things become a big deal to a lot of fans.
And Luke had some nice things to say about Brewer as well in his time there at Ole Miss. All right, let's change the subject here. Item number 10 on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. It seems only fair that we do this because we've highlighted all of these so far this spring and summer, and I don't mind telling you I like this. I like the tours of the new stadiums. I love seeing the way that SEC programs are spending their money on brand new facilities. And the latest to get into the act is Missouri, who had part of its stadium closed off on its spring game because of some stuff that it's building. And you see a little rendition here of exactly what it's going to look like there. You get the same sort of, like smoky glass entrance here with the logo shining through, and a nice little courtyard area outside there. First of all, I love the 3D animation here. To me, the animation on this stuff is almost like more amazing than the actual construction. Because I know people who can build buildings. I don't know anybody who can do this.
You even got the reflection in the windows of what's going on inside. I mean, that's attention to detail when you really... Missouri, and I think Missouri gets crushed a lot for what their stadium is compared to other SEC stadiums and their facilitation. So I'm with you, man. This is definitely a step in the right direction.
This, to me, looks like Missouri fully sort of vested into the SEC now. They're not building all this stuff playing in the Big 12.
No, they're not. And this is bowl game payouts. This is SEC Network payout. You didn't get that in the Big 12. And it's not, I don't want to say keeping up with the Joneses, but these are the facility improvements you have to make if you're going to start to pull in big-time recruits, and that's what Missouri expects from their program.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the hiring of Jimbo Fisher makes Texas A&M feel like a full-fledged member of the SEC. These kinds of building projects at Missouri kind of do the same thing for them, so nice job there. As we get ready to close out our show today, we're always looking to kind of close out the same way. We're always thinking about champions of life and kind of humorous ways to sort of close things out. I'm a little bit conflicted about this video I'm about to show you, Mike. I don't know that you've had a chance to see this yet. I think this is a really good idea. I think this video is really funny. but I am very concerned if this starts spreading, because this is the last thing I want to encounter when I'm traveling and staying in hotels. Take a look at what this group of young people did in terms of turning a hotel and its sort of interior hallways into their own pathway for a relay race.
I haven't seen it.
It's a great video, seems incredibly fun, but this is the last thing old guys like me want to encounter when I'm trying to get some sleep in a hotel. Watch this. This is very funny. All right, the relay is about to start. So here's the one guy, and now when you sort of zoom back, there's a race going on every floor.
Oh, God.
So it's all a relay from like one, place to the other. You see sort of stacked up here. It's a cool video. The people that made this have said they had no idea that it was going to go viral. They were just doing this to have fun. They're obviously, I guess, a track team of some kind. But Mike, when I go to a hotel, like, I'm 41. I'm in a hotel for one reason these days. That's to get some sleep.
Yeah.
I can't have a bunch of young folks running around and, banging on the hallways while I'm trying to get some shut-up.
This concerns me for a different reason, though. If this is a track team, one stub toe, you're talking about a pinky toe going the opposite direction here. These guys are wearing no socks, no shoes. Maybe this is the old man coming out in me, but I'm not worried about the sleep so much as are you really going to let your athletes do that?
It is a cool video, though.
No, I would do it. I can definitely... If I had more video cameras back when I was like that age, I'm doing stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like when I was growing up, there were no video cameras like this.
They're everywhere now,
man. Dumb things
Can't get away with anything.
All right, check out the podcast. It'll be up for you right after the show. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts. It'll be a great way for you to connect with SEC Country Live every single day if you want to listen to the audio version of our program. Also, share the show with your friends on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. Let them know we're talking about the SEC here each and every afternoon. And don't forget, a week from today, Mike's debut. Tell me what it's called again?
Roll Tide Daily.
I love the name. Roll Tide Daily. They're on the Alabama SEC Country video channels. That's going to be a lot of fun. But for now, though, we'll see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for another episode of SEC Country Live. Y'all have a great day.